Greetings to everyone. Please, Marina, turn on mics for our speakers. If you have technical announcements first, today we have simultaneous interpretation into English. You can change your working languages by hitting the key on a globe icon and choose English as your working language. Immediately, you will be able to turn off original version in Ukrainian. This way, you will hear English. Well, we can get started then. We will be looking forward to all the participants to join us shortly, but not to keep anyone wait for us for long. We will look into the first agenda items that we have among our priorities. While selecting our discussion topic, we decided that privatization looks pretty much like a lottery. That was some agenda that you might favor, or there was some business model, or if some process simulation was in place, and due to some adjustment or some error, you happen to lose something or to fail the auction or not to participate in an auction for a facility that you might have interest in. There can be a case where your opportunities will be lost and no other chance will emerge. There is an expectation that more other facilities will rise on the auction list, but yet someone will win out the facility of your interest. That is the reason why all these questions that we will raise today look quite interesting for everyone. And we will speak about guarantors, since that is a very sensitive issue, and there are many other agents that might not impact the results of auction. And among the speakers that will present the speeches today, you will be able to hear real cases, true situations, and exits. This is the reason why I would like to introduce the first speaker, Mrs. Olga Batova, Deputy Head of the State Property Fund of Ukraine. Good morning. Olga is far not a mere advisor who recommends from time to time to undertake these are the steps to better the current stand of things. But she is also the one who streamlines actively reforming privatization. And it goes without saying that feedback from Olga and some practical nuances that no one but Olga knows the best will be indeed very insightful to hear today. We have Alexander Melnik, lawyer, that is our active partner on the privatization projects for a number of facilities that were not shortlisted for privatization. They were actually on an auction potential for ports exclusively before the wholesome comprehensible program was initiated, and for the legal scrutiny, there were some loopholes that we have all touched upon in our work. They will be reflected in the delivery that Alex will make today. And apart from that, we will touch upon some practical details, and our further discussion will touch quite simple things that the current webinar will be dedicated to primarily, and that's about errors. And Olga, this question goes to you. What errors do the potential buyers that hinder them balancing their positions in the market occur? First of all, I would like to extend my greetings to everyone present today with us here over the webinar. And for everyone to have a clear understanding of what goes on in Ukraine, there should be pretty well divided in your minds that there is big and small privatization. CET, all those projects that belong to big privatization, they exceed 250 million Ukrainian enterprises. That is, for instance, a United chemical company that is shortlisted for auction, and auction is scheduled for May or June this year. The entire mechanism involves hiring an advisor out of Big Four or some big investment banks. Auction and privatization processes are accompanied by consultancies on the part of such a consultant or an advisor. Other facilities that belong to the band that is in its price or project value lower than 250 million Ukrainian hryvnia. For Prozora, this is an absolutely open platform that was connected and is connected with prozora.com UA, where you will find a virtual open e-cabinet and all of the respective information for the facility that is being auctioned. That's about financials for any facility that is on the short list in question. Then the creditors, debt is card procedures in progress and past card records, etc. All the important information that the investors might need, they can get from finance consultants or lawyers. If they do not possess such an information, then they failed to hire proper consultant. Apart from that, it's a very good approach when you take and analyze everything that's available in open sources yourself, and well, carrying out some scrutiny of some facility that might interest you. You might have another look at pictures that are suggested, for instance, for some facility, or you can go some day for an inspection and see how that all looks well, for the sake of some on-site inspection, or also ensure some additional examination of what's going on around the facility that you might choose in auction. For the project value that you might find on Prozora, that is project value without VAT. And apart from that, you should also keep it in mind that 10% extra should be added when you will bill on the transaction. And if you are not VAT, you will have to cover 20% on top of the project value, and you will not be able to appropriate the credit that is underpinning the current transaction under such arrangements. In these cases where privatization and participation in Prozora auction, non-residents are allowed in, and if you participate in such an auction on the part of a non-resident, you will be made pay 20% on top of everything. And for foreign investors, it is also crucial for you to find in Ukraine a professional consultant to help you structure any deal so that you'll be able to lower legal risk and conduct everything properly and match the requirements that are advanced towards you. And another thing that might resemble sort of a joke or might look some funny to you. Well, that's a sort of choice of participants. Unfortunately, we face some technical glitch where we cannot hear Olga. Something is wrong with her mic or with the transmission. Please accept my apologies. Most probably there was some technical glitch with the internet connection. Quite often, auction participants feel like gamblers. In case of our Dnipro hotel, everyone could observe how many participants were willing to participate in an auction, and while staying in front of their laptops, they rated this facility 111 when everyone could see how the stakes were raised. And that's true gambling affair. And when there is indeed a very powerful wish to win, the race proves to have some fake stakes in an amount that they might not possess. And in a case of victory, they might lose since they are underfunded. And it's a common business thing that you, while going into an auction, should provide some security for an auction project amount so that whenever you are requested to make a settlement, you should be capable to do that. For the participants that are crowded to participate in an auction, they normally explain what the process of auction entails. It does not hold any closed stage. Until the end of any auction, you will not be able to disclose number of participants or any other information that might be relevant to that. And you need to submit some closed stake or rate that you might count on and uh, count in and count on, and at stage of a closed stake that will appear to be the highest possible in each and every scenario, the participant will be given the final conclusive word to prove that you can avail an opportunity to stake your rate that will be higher by 1 hryvnia over these rates that are available and stakes made before you. Sometimes the participants cannot stake at an amount that they agree to do that, but following the Ukrainian current legislation, such stakes in the amounts announced make you settle the amount. But if you do not have proper money for that, then that is a contested issue. And if you announce some amount, this is a must for you to settle it accordingly. And when you have some amount that you are not willing to cover for some facility, there might be a case where at stage 3, in this vicious circle, you will be made pay even more than that to be able to win your project out of everyone else. And this will raise your chance of success. These are key messages that I wanted to make that for a kickoff that is more than enough. Thank you. That does sound very interesting. On your website, you can find lots of facilities. Quite a lot of them appear to be rather interesting. Some of them might be less attractive, but on the whole, everything looks rather fine. And speaking about these facilities that are attended, how many of them can find boys today? there is a common problem for all of the facilities and state public property. Again, some technical glitch. We tend to lose Olga today. We cannot hear you, Olga. Again, pardon me, please. How well can you hear me now? All is fine. Please go on. Unfortunately, all the public property facilities today do not meet satisfactory requirements by a condition of these assets that they possess. For all the facilities and enterprises, then standalone real estate sites are today a target of corruption. And that means that it's not once, but rather many times investors from abroad are called on to submit their bids. And let's say when it goes about state-owned enterprises, then there's always, again, a call to hire non-associated employees so that any risk of hiring families or close relatives or close friends could be prevented. Quite often, in case of SOEs, you will find credit liabilities, receivables that appear to be indeed very poor, and they put in risk these facilities and success of any transaction in question. Since when, for instance, the project value makes 10 million and there is a commitment of 6 months at the moment of acquisition of such a facility to cover all the receivables and all the debt that might emerge by facility, then you should be able to secure that all the procedures go smooth. Well, speaking about public property, there was a trend on the rise in terms of acquiring sites rather than enterprises. That means some segments in public property. Quite often, that's all about repair works, and then some formalities around land plots. And that will be pretty much time taking since the state never has enough time to dedicate itself to formalities of land and all other maintenance works. Then you should look into it very attentively and secure that everything is done properly. Any auction has three stages under it, and if for instance some participant failed to pass to the second stage, then in 2 weeks, another participant will change him. And if, for instance, if at second stage there was no one to turn up, then the third one, that is called the Dutch stage, where possibility to acquire some facility for 100,000 Ukrainian hryvnia will be a case that will signal lowering the price for the project in question, where all the participants will agree, and then we can see that the price will go up until someone will win it over. Quite often, when it gets about small privatization, such facilities will not go on big privatization, since there is a belief that there will be no one to come and purchase your facility, and in that case, a 50% decline in price will be the case. But we have a very sensitive practice where everything can be done by compromise, where the price countdown will make 50%. Quite a lot of participants take part in this procedures, and the price composition that is decided at stage 2 appears to be higher than it was initially at stage 2. And when you have some impression that you like some facility, then my advice is not to have hopes that for the first stage there will be no one to swap in the stages. That means that you should be determined as a stage when to be able to win, and you should look into how well the initial price matches your interest and your goals. And speaking about majority of the facilities, as the practice has shown it, are sold at stage 1. Approximately 30% of facilities are auctioned at stage 2, and nearly 12% of all facilities are auctioned at stage 3. There is also a list of some facilities that might swap for the third or fourth time in an auction in Kiev, for instance. We had a precedent where there was even 8 circles of auction, and eventually somebody quit it. Again, please comment whether the state property fund monitors number of participants are not allowed in to participate in an auction, and following the results of an auction, the outcomes are not recognized, or there is some disqualification at some stage. Look, the procedure was developed in such a manner to cater maximum to all the requirements advanced, and to ward off any risk corruption, to include that, and that no one will know the names of participants or those who might turn up for an auction. The same is endemic for Prozora auction, and the State Property Fund will communicate with the winner only after the winner passed all the stages, and that will be done through a platform where the auction allowed that, and now then the State Property Fund will conduct some document check. Under that, I would like to attest that in 99.9% of cases where there is some abolishment, let's say, or denial of a transaction, it's all about participants' will that says no to draw up an agreement. And as from the very beginning, you might have heard that this auction looks like some gambling, and such denials are reason for being unalert, or being not prudent, or being not ready for an auction in terms of amount, or not being careful while examining documents, or while signing off some unnecessary things, or being not capable to do that signature, well, or to do some transaction due to some causes. And there were some cases where, for instance, there was some miscommunication on settlement of VAT, and over 12 million Ukrainian hryvnia for VAT was required. And in that case, actually, a participant said no to transaction, and such cases generally might illustrate how denials in case of transactions might occur. At times, we normally quite 3 out of more than 2 or 3 thousand facilities or targets. So that it's also very important of participants to participate in an auction, where a number of targets, let's say, in the records of such a participant was high, and that will be promise for further victory in an auction. We had two, three cases where there was some deficiency in documents. There was undersupply of documents due to unprofessional players. Oh, okay, fine then. As you said it right, there is a number of well, unfair and uninformed players that voice as if the positiveness about participation in auction while being absolutely unprepared for that. And speaking about legal requirements and your recommendations for availing of some circumstances for requirers of targets, what are they? Thank you, Maxim, for your question. I hope that you can hear me well. Now, since the law might have a positive impression of an overlay in the legal market, but speaking about the court cases and the court rates appear to be the highest at that. There is a string of court loopholes where, let's say, the winners of auction, where there was some non-recognition due to some errors encountered along the avenue in this or that auction, and where there was some promise to participant, or where there was some error traced in this report, so that participants might have filed. There is also a possibility that some persons that did not participate in this or that auction participated in it despite all the alerts made before. Well, there was a court case where the claimant submitted a petition, and the court actually recognized that the claimant wasn't a participant of an auction, and that meant that none of claimant's rights were breached, damage in case when third party. And Supreme Court also proves with its practice that there is high risk in it. And while getting prepared, and in case of privatization, your representative will be scrutinized by your competitors, especially when it gets about some very interesting facility, some very attractive target, the heroin chases. And when we will examine errors and when we will issue our recommendations, we will voice what is required to mitigate the risk. Thank you for voicing your pause. And when it gets about requirements to the participants of auction, most probably, Alexander, you will be most resourceful from the point of sharing your insights regarding complexities and these targets that should be studied very scrupulously. On the one hand, there's a number of agents to consider and lots of things to factor in. The requirements are broad, and access to privatization is available by large to everyone around. And for small and big privatization, there is some distinct divide, and that promise of for resolutions by privatization facilities are absolutely identical for all participants. For one thing, when you cannot comply with the requirements to the requiring persons, that is a breach of the current legislation. The one you filed some fake news, and in case of some minor errors or some misprints, they do not serve as a basis for some denial in privatization. In case when some interest is lost in privatization, you should be assured that you are not subject to a list that is forbidden as subject a participant in such privatization transactions. Speaking about requirements, we should assert that under common rules, physical and legal persons and entities, no matter whether they are residents or be they non-residents, are allowed on. But there is an exhaustive list of features, properties, qualities, and traits that will signal that some participant cannot participate in auction. Give me or explain if I'm wrong, and please adjust me if I'm wrong. Recommend what is to done. What is the situation around offshore companies? Uh, Offshores are not allowed to participate in privatization transactions. In some cases, some participants that are registered in Cyprus that today ranked by some as let's say offshore or some onshore jurisdictions. How will you comment on that? Are the companies from Cyprus let you're absolutely right saying that these entities that are registered in offshore jurisdictions having unclear ownership structure cannot participate in auctions. Hearn, New Jersey, Panama, BVI, and many other similar or like jurisdictions do not allow these entities to participate, but yet it does not forbid their participation if their ownership structure is disclosed fully. The ownership structure is considered transparent where documents by 100% from the UBO's composition will be proved, and this way I would like to respond to the question that you addressed me with, and then participants can be allowed to participate even if they are initially registered in offshore, only in case where the ownership structure and UBOs are disclosed. And another alert for these subjects that are sanctioned. Olga, I'm not sure whether you have in your structure some detective unit. Well, and in case when there is some miscompliance, what do you do? Well, quite often we receive such questions, and once and again, somebody keeps asking us these questions. And actually, when it gets about the fund, we're normally governed by uh, the practices of the law enforcement bodies, and we go to the National Bank of Ukraine regulators. And since we're not law enforcement agents by our nature, that means that we will go to the competent bodies to get some hawk show overview of what is around some facility or participants. And in case when you work with some entities that will be competent for lifting sanctions and based on open source data, you make some conclusion that transactions with direct UBO is listed on the short list of sanctioned entities, then a proper decision is made. For that, I believe that Alex will be able to comment on whether the law is attached to associated or sanctioned entities. Now, the question is about associated persons. Most probably, the law will have it that the associated persons are attached to this confusion so that might arise along the way. Well, there is a divide between associated and sanctioned entities. When participants are willing to participate in an auction, they have a possibility to have some study of these participants that were approved by the president. And speaking about associated persons, the law on privatization does hold any definition, does not hold any definition on this that fall under the term of an associated person or entity. Whenever it goes about physical entities or individuals or persons, it's all about your family, close relatives, sons, daughters, sisters. Well, and in case when, for instance, you have half siblings, so they are also tracked. And any type of blood connection is accepted. And when, let's say, a director or the representative that acts based on the power of attorney by proxy can act here as a subject for examination at competent bodies. And in case if they possess one, two, let's say legal entities or share UBO, then this information should be accounted. And in case where some legal entity is associated with other legal entities, this entity will be ranked as an associated body as well, associated person entity. Let's label it this way. And there can be a case where you, as a participant of some auction, can be accountable and file by all accounts the requirements advanced. And when, for instance, you appear to be a director of some enterprise, there was some event that underpinned the reasoning for termination of transaction, then the risk will be there. Speaking about termination of some contract, does it mean that there was a case for the participant in auction where such participant before participated in an auction someday, and today there is some restriction and that imposes restraint transaction. You're absolutely right that there is some limitation in that case. If a participant in case of privatization in Ukraine and in case where there was some termination of privatization, uh, well, with participation or some associated entities, and in case where, let's say, a purchase and sale agreement envisaged some commitments for some purposeful, let's say, or earmarked use, I would say that in case of the anymore ever. And that I would like to give as an example some beautiful practice where a claim was submitted by participant, and in 2017 such a claimant, following the court procedures, terminated a purchase and sale agreement, and based on legal scrutiny, he faced a denial in 2019, and that resulted in a new claim where the claimant went to the court anew. And the court of first instance did not recognize righteousness of such a deed, and the court of the second instance said that this norm was the one that was in conflict with the constitution of Ukraine. And speaking about nature of this norm, it imposed additional commitments retrospectively. And for this, who are well aware all the legal mechanisms to underpin these procedures, the administrative uh, well, the Court of Appeal actually abolished the prior resolution, and the Court of Appeal went to the Constitutional Competent Court, and since that was a domain of constitutional violation, the state property fund did not support this claim, but we managed to achieve consideration of the plenum of the Supreme Court in Ukraine, where the panel attested that there was no justification, no proper grounds for going to the court, and there was no breach of the rule of law, and this transaction was aimed at fight with corruption and with some sort of misconduct. And there was a unilateral pose of participants of an auction that they wanted actually to abide to the current law, but in fact, due to the miscompliance, they were not let in. And that I would like to share a recommendation to check your records as well as the records of all the associated persons. Well, thank you very much for your input and for filing documents. If you have another look at these auctions that have already been held, and in case where you might have, let's say, five documents where one of the key documents is financials. So, Olga, please comment. What is to be done is if some entity is an overplayer, does it mean that such a player is not let in to this market? Look, I am a lawyer. Actually, I like when everything is done properly and the players recognize thanks to their literacy. But when, for instance, you submit some documents, you should see to it that you comply with all the criteria advanced towards you to full extent. And the Ukrainian law has it that you need to submit to the competent body the most recent financials, as well as everyone is aware of it. There are some quarterly financials and annual financials as well. We face common practice where a participant registers LLC, for instance, on March of the 25th, and let's say on April the 5th, then they file quarterly financials, and that will suffice. Since the law does not foresee some bound for income of profits, there is no requirement that can be a threshold for profit indicators to be recognized as an admissible participant. And what will suffice is some receipt electronically or some hard copy of it just to prove that the financials are filed properly. This does not narrow the criteria for an entity to participate. And at that, I would like to ask you one question. What if the financials has zeros in a slider? Does that affect the result or chance to win? I cannot affirm that this will impact the result. Actually, we look into the origin of funding only at the stage of drawing up some agreement and at the stage of carrying out its tenets, but not at the stage of announcing who the winner is. From the point of origin of budget, this is the target for the National Bank of Ukraine. It's a financial monitoring unit, then the financing bank or financial institution that handles the transaction, and the controllers. And when you are fact checked as a winner in an auction, you will be committed to submit some letter from a bank or other financial institution to underpin their polls, since they are normally governed by their tentative resolution to issue credit to you and for your receivables or for the transaction that will involve, in this case, your assets, so then collateral, security, and everything else in this package, surety, guarantees, or GSLCs. Well, and if you go, for instance, to some foreign bank, not the Ukrainian one, you will be required to submit full package of documents. Does it mean that at the moment of transaction, you're allowed to benefit from your equity or from those funds that will be raised after the transaction is concluded. Alexander, please share your view on that with us. Actually, now speaking about requirements, so they are not precisely set out in the current legislation. There is an expectation that the creditor will meet all the requirements that are advanced to the purchaser, and well, actually, all the information that is being requested, it will be shared on the one against bound disclosure on the structure of ownership and UBOs. The state property fund will need to track it whether the requirements to credit are met, and as an additional input, all the documents attached to that will be fact checked after the auction is closed. This means that any disqualification as the register participant is out of question. Speaking about risk at the big and small privatization that is dedicated to documents. Speaking about a small privatization, following the fact check examination and risk assessment, for instance, after you became a winner, unfortunately, the law does not allow to bring afterwards such a document. This means that this is a recommendation to submit a full package before you enter the first stage. And speaking about big privatization, all the documents are checked at the entry level. And speaking about foreign participants, Olga, could you please give us some explanation whether there is some notice or some laws or some requirements to involve some Ukrainian entity to enter into the Ukrainian market for non-residents? We kicked off full out privatization with all the corresponding, so to speak, accompanying streams and players. Yet past year, when it gets some enterprise, this will require some time lapse for inventory, then to check maintenance condition and financials eventually, etc. In fact, and that means that while getting small privatization facility ready for privatization that will take you 6 months to do that. And currently 99% of participants, so that appear to be winners, are Ukrainian investors. Unfortunately, and on the other hand, that proves that the Ukrainian and the Ukrainian business that has money face some problems in uh, having no pool to invest in, and active privatization gives more opportunities for the Ukrainian to invest their deposits or the savings that they keep safe at home under their pillows. But we're not yet confident that non-availability of such an active interest on the part of foreign investors is attached to sales of small privatization or some non-strategic facilities. We had some investor that acquired seaports plant, but actually uh, there was a denial to follow this transaction eventually. And one guess about by privatization, these are very big enterprises, for instance, the market leader that is involved into the development and extraction of titanium and nellite ore in Ukraine. And we expect that over upcoming 2 3 weeks, there will be an approval from the Cabinet of Ministers, a set of rules for that, and an auction will be called. That will be the biggest privatization step as of the times when Stala was privatized, and approximately 10% of these participants that aim to participate in it will be represented with foreign line investors. And this means that for the time being, we have pertinent contracts or NDAs with investors that have displayed their interest. And today, that number exceeds 12 units, and 9 of them uh, foreign jurisdictions will act as administrators. And speaking about foreign investors, their involvement will be traced in case of big privatization. And speaking about big privatization and all the preparatory arrangements for that, United Mining and Chemical Enterprise that will sell extraction of titan and development of pertinent co-industries. And then Hotel President that was sold past year does not comply at all accounts with the requirements advanced. And we have some hope that that will be some subsequent privatization transaction, and the third facility will be put on record this summer. That will be Bolshevik plant. This facility is located in downtown of Kiev, and that will also turn up very attractive for investors. Even though the name for this enterprise is a plant, this is just a label, but out of all the public property facilities and plants, there's no production, no manufacturing on it, and the main profit item on the ledger is a lease of these premises that present actually the asset structure of this enterprise. And speaking about Kiev Oblenergo, that's another target, and we will make another effort to bring to an auction center of Oblenergo as a vertically integrated holding, together with a number of mines that serve as a resource base for Central Energo, will be another stimulus for privatization. That will be a campaign that will stimulate inflow of foreign investors. to Ukraine. Thank you very much for voicing the current prospects of development in terms of building up relationships for investors with Ukraine. And if our full out list of facilities has not been voiced, you could find this short list on the website of the State Property Fund. And if there is some interest on behalf of investors, the fund will be more than glad to respond to your inquiries. Yesterday, there was some movement in the Rada to unblock big privatization. I guess there is some fake news about that, some gossip spreads. Let me intervene and explain the current state of things. Speaking about the bill on unblocking big privatization, it was passed in the second reading past week, but later we received some nay voices as a signal to abolish any effort towards that. And today or tomorrow, after going to the president for sign off this law, proves that big privatization will not be unblocked. Thank you for your commentary. And speaking about some unnatural response to what's going on, this bill regarding unblocking big privatization was not successful yesterday. And speaking about big privatization, so the bill to Ukraine and some local hindrances. Does the State Property Fund, do you see any local barriers to that? And Prozora, will it help to the foreign investors? Speaking about Prozora platform, we believe that following all of the ratings available globally, Prozora platform today appears to be the best globally. This means that for the sale and use of some foreign platform for small privatization, no one today will be interested in legal scrutiny of these sites and targets. And speaking about well, small privatization, this is all about live auction. Let's say Sotheby, for instance, where you have all participants present in some room and there is hands to voice their rates and stakes, and that's a sort of public offering done publicly and live. In case of Dnipro Hotel, there is no necessity of such a type of auction. And for the moment, I would like to say that the State Property Fund, among all others, in fact, makes an attempt to initiate sale of on or to 100% some facility, but in these cases, so where, for instance, some enterprise where it is accountable for some target or is subject to some requirement. Again, some technical glitch on, but we cannot hear Olga again. Some internet problem, some connection failure. Soon. Alexander, now we have you. We believe there are three cases on end, three criteria where some enterprise might not be compliant with the specifics of auction, be that a natural monopoly or geographically. Let's see, geographical makeup, that is close distance to the seaside, or some other specifics? Oh, well, internet connection, that is a disadvantage of online cooperation. When it gets about, well, again, privatization alongside and webinars and furtherance or work, we should make it sure every time that internet coverage is efficient and everything works smoothly, seamless. And speaking about the state property fund, as I mentioned that before, we believe that for the state it will be right not to sell 100% of property, but to involve a financial investor or a profile investor for a minority share. And I believe that this year this process will not be launched yet, and as of the next year, as I feel I can see it, there will be the cases where by IPO or some minority shares, bogus in other terms, the state property will cover partially ownership divide, but to ensure competitiveness in the markets and to be able to donate properly for the state and to secure maximum effectiveness in divide of shares among the stakeholders. So in asset management, we need to conduct some talks and implement changes and some adjustments into the current legislation. We have already been successful in filing some bill on privatization that reflects our effort over the past year, or where we celebrated actually takeaways from all these lessons that were learned from the prior records, where uh, there was joy not from result but from the processes collected over time under these transactions. But in a big number of laws that govern our operations, that will make cooperation with investors work uh, fruitfully, prove that the current legislative framework provides grounds for sales of lower to 90% of state assets. Well, we're short of time, and at that, I would like you, Alex, to respond to the questions that we collected. Speaking about less on less see relationships, speaking about uh, liaison relationships, are there any preferences in that? Speaking about privatization, anyone can become a participant in privatization transactions. If you're a lessor, then you can initiate privatization of your facility. But where you're a less, and speaking about privatization, it is conducted through auctions. As a lessor, once you aim not to lease but to keep your facility, you can do that through sales and abandonment of your asset. And speaking about procedures, primary target is to get permit of your lessee, and not lower than 25% of your asset value should be counted at that. And if uh, your lessee does not approve such betterment, then there is a risk that you will lose. Another question gets to Olga. If some participant takes part in an auction without any aspiration to win. For that, I would like to add a few comments to what has already been said in this respect. And for all the participants of the State Property Fund has initiated under the umbrella of the State Property Fund a project that is named as Find and Seize Privatization. This is a sort of some funny encoded name under the umbrella of the State Property Fund. What does it entail? Unfortunately, the state property today is very vast. Unfortunately, we did not have any auditing for the state property. Unfortunately, again, the ministry that is administered some enterprises or facilities and targets, they are not well informed about the upcoming developments, and we will be very grateful if some picture, for instance, with a physical address and a description is shared with us. And when, for instance, there's some initiation for some target, and you share in your communication with the fund all this pertinent information, we today are very responsive to this communication that we get from everyone willing to participate in the state auction. And since times initiators dress us with a semi-ruined office, or we at the State Property Fund take care of it to prevent entrance of such facilities into the privatization transactions. And it's in our interest to allow in proper, interesting, attractive facilities on a short list. Following procedures and bills and all legal frameworks underpinning these transactions, we normally give recommendations for some facilities to go on privatization, and in some cases, while there is some denial to allow and some facility for privatization, that can be a case where an initiator might have submitted his file with an office for some facility for some weird benefits that they might have from such an arrangement. Actually, that is a sort of fraudulent deal, and there is a number of cases that we look at with a very scrupulous eye, and for that we need to be equipped with proper promises to be able to pass to the privatization campaign such facilities. We will continuously keep active, and we will keep on searching for such facilities with an aim of betterment of such facilities. We do believe that purchase and lease of such facilities, unfortunately, in 99% of cases, appear to be a corruption component of these basket of deals. And in many cases, betterment for not higher than 25% of asset value is never reached, and in quite a lot of cases, there is no improvement in the condition of such assets. The state property fund does not see an improvement when some facility is offered as a potential target, and as abiding the current legislation and being absolutely lawful in our deed, we decided to elicit any risk of corruption and to allow in resale of such a facility, and later such a facility after sale, well, after examining it all, will be shortlisted, and user lessor that has undertaken some betterment for your asset will have a possibility to acquire your assets under these conditions and circumstances that are in place on Prozorum. Again, if you do not agree for the price that has been imposed for the present, that means that this who will acquire this facility will rectify the cost that were invested, but exclusions to that will be vested with the right for some socially viable facilities that are leased for many years, where having a commitment to undertake some constructive action, for instance, Yacht Club in Adasa, where there was an aspiration to conduct some sale transaction on the 5th of January. That was indeed a very unusual date after the auction. Well, after the new year for the auction, and where everyone having a glass of champagne in their hands, supported that. In Odessa, children are involved into the yacht club classes, and speaking about the yacht club, actually, past year we appointed a director that is head of the association's president, the president of the yacht sports club in Ukraine, and this year we expect that the EU Cup will be held in Europe, and for children in Odessa, the same activity will be arranged. And apart from that, there will be a string of new interesting animation around that, and we have faced some batment around this asset, and there is also an expectation that a commitment to preserve this asset in proper condition to cater to the needs of children, and actually to be able to make up for the costs incurred. We plan to have a restaurant there, since this way it will be the easiest way to earn on renovation. And over 10 upcoming 15 years, that will be the best solution. But for the final exit, yet we need some final touches to that. And speaking about the current situation with these participants who intervene and swap their stakes that turned to win our prize. Hello, everyone. Yula, actually, I'm a participant of a big group on Telegram. Frankly, I do not remember that well when exactly we had these talks in the past, but in our office, we raised this issue once and again, and the current legislation has a much better situation that it might look on the surface. Well, the state property fund, without proper approval with the cabinet of ministers, cannot function autonomously, independently, and we cannot set out any conditions that we ourselves will rank as those that will satisfy the infrastructure and interests of investors. And since we are not well in some wine manufacturing plant to go into lease to a lessor, there's some legislative possibility where, for instance, by way of this wedge, the plant can win, and the current lessor can enjoy the right for that price that was announced at an auction carry out proper transaction. Now, a valiant of new procedures and lease transactions were continuously entering amendments and changing the current legislation and procedures in place to make them better. But there should be proper understanding that in each and every case, when we withdraw ourselves from the best practices and when we target by target move along the avenue, and in this and that specific scenarios, we face a scenario of corruption playground, and when some final provisions, some final word will be in place, and everyone accountable will be recognized and put on record, then everything might get clearer. But so far, we do not have any crystal mechanism to underpin these relationships. And speaking about the current procedures and the current laws, I'd like to state that we're very glad that the lessons that produce wins will remain at the level they are. Superb, just perfect. Thank you. That's a very positive note and tone. Speaking about the targets of the state property fund and problems that you named are attached to the areas and recommendations that we disseminate across our clients, and we should be indeed very careful while doing some legal scrutiny, examine documents in advance, and have a possibility to do some on-site inspection with involvement of a number of technical specialists to see what each facility is in fact in reality. And speaking about an auction, we need to account what settlements and amounts will be recovered and how to get tax credit in that case. And you should also be able to assess how much money you have, and not to voice this takes that you're there to voice. And speaking about closed auction, that is sort of instrument that will allow you to get stake, or for you to get prepared for the system to allow you in, and to support wholesome transaction. Yes, so for that, for proper completion, we need to see whether literacy was in place, whether compliance is there, and we need to check documents. So then connectedness, liaison, and all sort of ties with associated persons, UBOs, and ownership structures. And again, do that in advance. Before you enter privatization, you need to see into it how to structurize purchase and sale transaction, or what is to be done in terms of beneficiaries on this transaction, and these consultants who will give you prompts how to set adequate price for the current asset, and who you evaluating consultants will appear to become, and taking into account tight deadlines that are also a hazard, and in case when there is a risk of no credit of incoming settlements after signing off your transactions and settlement for your assets, and in case of some risk of delay when you cannot function properly on the transactions on credit, please do it all to see to it that everything is fact checked problem. Olga, more comments? And that I would like to say that I'm really proud that we're quite successful at completing digitalization the way we did it. We have a proper system in place and our settings and filters set out to ensure user-friendly choice of a facility that might interest them. And there is also a convenient possibility to sign for the facility that might appear to be very interesting for you to have tests using it where you might have some date for an auction or where you will have documents for your facility of interest and when on some website you will have an exhaustive list of all the documents to be governed by and apart from that we'll have a standalone channel. Please feel free to sign up for it anytime. We'll be indeed happy to have you in our audience. And speaking about privatization, this is a continuous process. And speaking about the facilities, all of this lots that are highlighted on this list, we should maximize our pace and we believe that all the stakeholders will be supportive from the point of documents or possible examinations, checks, reputation, etc. And we on our behalf will also assist. Primarily, our motto is to support business and do it transparently, openly, with no corruption, to line with that. And thank you very much for voicing your viewpoint on what we have around privatization here in Ukraine. In the follow-up, you will get all the useful materials from fund and a link. You will be able to avail of an opportunity to try yourself on a training instrument, some software to train your skills to play at an auction. And keep it in mind that a very resourceful and respectful state property fund provides quality support and remains responsive to your inquiries. You are more than welcome to join us more for other webinars. Thank you very much for your attention. Good luck. Wishing